Welcome to the channel. I'm going to talk about the SA80 Sling. That's a sling that's used with the British Forces SA80 rifle, or more properly known as the L85A3 rifle. As the name suggests, the L85 rifle was introduced in 1985, and this was at a time when the British Forces were still using the semi-auto SLR rifle. The thinking was that if confronted with an enemy armed with AK-47s, a semi-automatic rifle was probably not a good match, and so it would be a good idea to have a fully automatic assault rifle, on top of which NATO was standardizing the 5.56 round, and so being able to have a rifle that would use the 5.56 round would mean full compatibility with other forces and the ability to use ammunition across a number of different NATO forces. So the MOD took a design that they had been working on and reconfigured it to be able to use the 5.56 round and rolled that out. Now, the L85A1 rifle was found to have a number of problems, particularly during the First Gulf War in 1991, because it suffered from problems with reliability. It was difficult to maintain in the field, and sand got in everywhere, and generally speaking, the rifle turned out to be much less reliable than they'd hoped for. And so by 1998, they had come up with a new specification, the A2 specification, which solved a lot of the problems that had been experienced earlier and was generally well received. By now we're on the A3 version, or A3 specification, and that's come out in 2016, and the idea behind that was to extend the operational life of the old L85 rifles so that they would be able to carry on until 2025, upon which the thinking is that the British Forces will adopt a different weapons platform. We'll see how that goes in the course of the next couple of years. Anyway, back to the SA80 Sling, and the sling itself is deceptively simple. It consists of a piece of 25mm webbing strap. It's got a fully enclosed rectangular loop on one side, sometimes made of metal. The older ones would have a plastic one. A quick release buckle, very standardized, and a ladder lock type slider in the rear. This one happens to be labeled, but many of them are not. And so when coming across these in surplus, they often get confused with utility straps. Indeed, many of them end up bound up with utility straps. Sometimes only half of one can be found, and the other one has either been lost to the mists of time, or if you're lucky, you'll find it in the box. The original colour was olive, but they've been updated now to a kind of tan khaki to match better with the MTP. One of the innovations of the SA80 Sling was to use the 3-point sling design. A 2-point sling is pretty self-explanatory. Front end would go on an eyelet or a sling point near the front of the rifle, and the rear would go on a sling point or eyelet, most likely located on the buttstock. So if you were to bring the rifle to an aiming position, then you would unsling your rifle, hold it in your hand, and bring it to the shoulder. The idea with 3-point sling is that part of the sling will remain worn around the body, forming a continuous loop, while the front part of the sling is able to detach or semi-detach in such a way that the rifle can be brought into an aiming position without hindrance. And the way the SA80 Sling does this is by allowing this portion of it to be worn around the body. That's the portion behind the quick release buckle, but this portion to be looped through the metal ring. And so if it were to be deployed, then the user would just unclip the quick release buckle, the buttstock put into the shoulder in an aiming position, whereas the rest of the sling remains looped around the body. When not required, it would be just as easy just to clip the quick release buckle back together, just slide the strap through, and then you would be back to wearing the sling as usual. The answer to the question, does an SA80 Sling therefore only have use with an SA80? The answer to that is an emphatic no. Any rifle which has got these rectangular type eyelets, which are able to accept a 25mm strap, will be able to take an SA80 sling. Ensuring that the sling is laid flat alongside your rifle, with the metal eyelet portion facing away from you when lying flat, and the buckle with the sewn strap facing you this way, and a portion of the buckle behind it, like so. We first start off by threading the end of the strap, which has not got the loop sewn to it, through the front eyelet of the rifle. That's followed then by threading it through the metal rectangular loop on the sling itself, and then forming a tight loop, like so. Next, we take the same end that we've just threaded through, and now what we have to do is thread it through the back part of the buckle, like so. I've just turned it over, but really this should be the side facing the rifle. And so you end up with an assembly, if I turn it over a little bit, that looks a bit like this. So from the front, you'll have the quick release buckle accessible easily. On the rear, the strap is threaded through the rectangular loop here, and it is also threaded through the back of the buckle. That's the portion with the side release. What you end up with is a secure loop around the front, and also the strap looped through the second half, this fully detachable back part of the sling. But we're not going to detach it. What we're going to do next is we're going to take the same strap end and now thread it through the back eyelet, that's to say the one that's located on the buttstock. So what we're going to do is take the same end that we've been threading through this whole time, and we're going to take the second half of the sling. So this is the side, the portion with the ladder lock and the sewn hanging loop, and we're going to thread through the ladder lock, both ends, which then locks the whole thing in place. That's not going to go anywhere. The sling is through both ends of the rifle, front and rear. You have a loop that you can put yourself through to wear. You can, if you don't want to use it that way, just use it as a 2-point sling in traditional manner. If you unclip, then the portion that is being worn is easily adjusted. So if you find you have too much material, then you just pass the material back through the ladder lock, and then you have a relatively smaller loop. Additionally, you have this loop on the back. It can be used to hang up the rifle, which could come in handy depending on the circumstances. Now here's some of the more negative aspects of the sling. So that bit that you loop around the body is great if you're just wearing basic webbing and you haven't got a huge amount of bulk on the upper shoulders particularly. But the minute you have body armor, perhaps a combination of plates and soft panels together with some pouches, maybe a camelback, any other gear you might need to wear, then all of a sudden that extra bulk means that there's a lot of points that extra loop of strapping on the sling can get snagged on, activating something that you might not want, squishing your hydration bladder, getting in the way, and not really being as mobile as you'd like it to be. When the British Forces moved to using body armour as a regular issued operational item, they came up with the single point sling. This is one of the slings developed for use with the Osprey armour carrying vest, and what's notable about it is that since the vest itself was a molly-based system using 25mm webbing, that slightly stiffened portion would allow that to sit on a loop of molly webbing that would be just the next 25mm below, giving you a D-ring, and then you'd have a portion which would adjust slightly for height and a portion that would detach, and that would just attach the rifle. It was just a lot less fussy. It was very lightweight, of course, and so because you have the bulkiness of the body armor anyway to weigh the entire vest down, you actually ended up with a fairly stable platform, a quick release detaching of the rifle if needed, or the rifle hanging at the right shoulder so that it was ready to be brought into an aiming position whenever required. Standard kit seems to have moved back to MTP versions of the older combat body armor vest, together with PLCE webbing also in the MTP version, and there's now also an SA80 Sling identical to the olive one, but in a kind of khaki tan colour. So it looks like the SA80 Sling is here to stay in pretty much its original form. But a thought occurs to me. Given that they have had these before with some degree of success, and given that the standard PLCE yoke does actually have some webbing on the front on both shoulders, then it could be an idea to bring the single point sling back like this. Of course, it would help if the strap was attached at slightly narrower points. It would give it a bit more stability. Or they could just include an extra D-ring and you could do away with this whole top portion altogether and just have a strap bit. I don't know if that idea would fly. I mean, the problem with a piece of webbing like this is that it just doesn't have the bulk of a full body armor, so it might end up being a little bit unstable, maybe pulling down one shoulder and unbalancing the entire kit. I don't know. In any case, I thought it'd be food for thought. Let me know in the comments below if you think it would be a good idea or if you think it's perhaps one that just won't work. I'd love to hear what you think. And I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you found it interesting, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.